So I'm at a loss for how to segue onto this.
That's sure.
Because
That's
there's kind of two things that are interesting happening. One is that a group is pressuring Steam credit card companies to pressure Steam to delist certain types of adult content, certain types of games on Steam. But then also related to that, new Waypoint went down.
Yeah,
how do we want to start? How do we want to start tugging at these threads?
Yeah, it's all related.
I think it's probably worth starting with the bigger picture, like the Steam stuff.
Steam.
I think we start with Steam, and then I think the reporting on that leads us into talking about new Waypoint 2.0, however you want to characterize it. But yes, Valve has confirmed that they have removed certain adult games from Steam. This is a piece from PC Gamer. Valve confirms credit card companies' pressure to delist certain adult games on Steam. Valve has given a statement that says to PC Gamer, "We were recently notified that certain games on Steam may violate the rules and standards set forth by our payment processors and their related card networks and banks. As a result, we are retiring those games from being sold on the Steam store." Valve told PC Gamer they were going to, quote, issue app credits should they have another game, the companies affected, that they'd like to distribute on Steam in the future. Steam has not, or rather Valve has not announced explicitly what those games are, using various database scraping tools like SteamDB that monitor what happens on Steam. People have gotten a sense of the kinds of games that were removed, such as Incest Tales, Webcam Daughter, Slave of the Police Officer, Incest Daughters BDSM, Interactive Sex, Incest Daughters, Interactive Sex, Twin Sisters. You get.
Are these just the same games?
I don't.
I feel like you said. I feel like you said Incest Daughters like 1,000 times.
Well, there's a lot of DLC. Like these are also
okay.
Episodic sort of
DLC
stuff.
for
Got to collect them all.
There
Jesus
are
Christ.
that specific ones that all sound the same, have very similar looking thumbnails. My guess is that is all the same, quote, experience called Interactive Sex. Then there are other games like Sex Village and Incest Tales. I think what is the collective theme running through that one is obviously incest, but this is often the reason folks worry about things that like large groups of people could maybe collectively agree like give them like makes them
the
feel
willies.
icky. I wanted to say ick, but like ick has taken on a different term these days, and so I no longer can use it. But you know what I mean?
Has it?
Things that give you the ick. I'm just it's become.
What? Let's table that.
Let's table that. If you were just to say like, oh, like should Steam be listing like sexual incest games? Like I think a lot of people would say, hey, yeah, probably not. But the reason that's important is because what's happening a lot of the times in these scenarios is it is not Valve/Steam making a value judgment in which they're saying, hey, there are certain games, experiences that we want to allow and not allow on our platform. Valve, for good and meant oftentimes for ill, has a very, as we've talked about, libertarian approach to Steam in which you can sort of publish anything. And I mean, look, you can even see the degree to which Nintendo has allowed sexually explicit content on the eShop as, hey, at a certain point, everyone just sort of threw up their hands to some degree and said, I don't know, man. You want to watch these virtual people fuck? Like, Godspeed. And we'll take your money while you do it. But here, it's a question of like, where is that pressure coming from? And we can get into the specifics of that because that will probably take us into our second story. But I think the broader story that's happening here is one that is not specific to Valve, is not specific to Steam. It is pressure we have seen from various anti-pornography, pro-censorship, often religious-oriented groups that are going state to state, country to country, finding ways to exploit pressure to enact censorship in a very puritanical, anti-sex way, and doing that through pressure points that companies have a difficult time resolving. And so in this case, it's going after payment processors like Visa, MasterCard, PayPal and be like, are you really going to host this on your platform by facilitating the transaction? And they don't want the headlines, and so they walk away, and then places like Valve and Steam suddenly have to adhere to an anti-sex
this is a routine problem with like any place that sex workers like find
Correct.
to own their labor and have direct revenue stream will eventually be targeted, and those revenue streams will dry up, and the platforms that are built on the back of sex work will turn their backs on those users to play ball with these requests, these regulations.
OnlyFans trying to do that is the wildest shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's what the
you know
website
what? You be
is.
fans of anything. What about cooking?
Yeah.
Whether like
Which the platform for any fans of any sort of
look, people want to watch other people doing stuff. So
Things.
what if what if
Activities
there was
of all
less
sorts.
sex stuff happening on this platform and more like hobbies? I fucking hate these people, man. Like, it's okay. I think if you're one of those groups, if you're someone who's like, I'm really concerned about like pornography and like child abuse, I'm super concerned. I'm gonna get all up in everybody's business to address that, because I'm a good person and I want to fight child abuse. And if you're against me, you must be pro child.
Who would be against that?
Yeah.
And when I hear that, I increasingly think, you know what? The first thing you got to prove to me is prove to me you're not the pervert. Because I think you are. I think you probably are. Why do you think about kids getting fucked so often? That seems like a you problem. But the other thing is that if you're concerned about these things, we know like what the where the risk vectors are for children being abused. Always has been. It's family members, and then people with access to children. A lot of times faith leaders. Faith leaders are a special risk category because often they sort of have a status that might be even higher than parents. Parents will defer to faith leaders in a way that they wouldn't to like a little league coach, for instance. So those are the ways that children are harmed. But we don't focus on that stuff. We don't focus on like how do you investigate and prosecute crimes like that. How do you make sure processes are better for detecting and taking in evidence in a responsible, timely, and sensitive manner? Not concerned about that. What we're concerned about is censoring what people can say, what people can enjoy, what people can do. Because ultimately, what a lot of this stuff masks, the reason these groups hate a lot of porn is because, first, they hate a lot of people like sort of monetizing their own sexuality and sort of having any sort of agency or power in that. But they're also, if you tend to look, there's a lot of through lines of, well, we don't hate all porn, but we're really concerned about children being exposed to like porn or ideas about sexuality that don't gel with our whole like patriarchal worldview. And that is like, I'm not going to be standing up here and being like, you know what? Incest Daughters, The Awakening is a good game for that's the vanguard progress right there. But the net these folks cast does tend to be about like, let's make sure that we control like what people are allowed to encounter, what fantasies they're allowed to entertain. And a lot of times that focus that you scratch beneath the surface, a lot of times it's about various sorts of queer media and queer experiences. And they hate the shit out of that. They hate it because they think that through that stuff, this is where all those queer kids are coming from. Obviously, like our process is we should have a steady pipeline of like patriarchal, straight, hetero people just going out the factory. And that if that's not happening, that must be because people are getting these ideas from stuff. They're getting it from media. They're getting it from porn. And the existence of this stuff alone, even if, like some people are going to encounter this stuff and it's going to like, oh yeah, this is appealing to me in ways that I didn't previously understand. But there's also going to be people who, through experiencing various types of media, are going to have a broader definition of like human sexuality and pleasure and relationships. And even if they're the straightest, most hetero person in the world, they will still have a broader understanding of that stuff. And that's kind of the mission of these groups. Like they pick the most heinous stuff, right? Because that's the soft target. No one's going to stand up for, the types of games we were just listing. Like those are easy targets.
No one's going on social media to like post like the Abe Lincoln standing up and because all of a sudden it turns you into the
let the incest daughters go free.
But these groups take an inch and then take an inch and then take an inch. Like that is that's part of the reason that is the wedge issue for them is like they'll use this to bust open the door to move forward. Like on PC Gamer, for example, like the article writing this up, they link at the bottom to like the history of like payment processors and the ways they exert their pressure on media companies that host and allow folks to monetize their sex work. And boy, it goes back to an incredible piece from Samantha Cole. Pornhub just purged all unverified content from the platform. Like, go support Samantha's work at 44 Media. And that was an instance to which reporting from Vice, reporting from Samantha about revenge porn and other types of really heinous material, sexually exploitative, like exploiting folks onto this platform, was reported on. The payment processors had a problem with it. Pornhub changed their policies. Like, it's an unwieldy tool, but one that was done, I think, with a collective understanding of there is no consent happening here. At the point that there is no consent, like, sure, tools should be exercised if there aren't other ways of stepping in to regulate it and exert that consent. Like, okay, this is a tool that results in people being better protected as a result. That same tool then gets wielded in situations like this to like say, but we got to get the icky incest games off the platform. But like, as you said, Rob, like all it takes is just that inch. Okay, we'll get rid of the incest. Do you think they're going to stop? Do you think they're somehow satisfied with like that being enough? Like, no, then you're starting to like the anti-trans panic that's like happening in society. Like, it's all just 1 inch closer to the ultimate goal of just like scrubbing this shit from the internet or putting it behind so many barriers in terms of monetizing it to make it a part of a career or part of a way that you pay your rent, or putting so many ID sort of hoops in front of people that it's basically impossible to access absent using services like a VPN. But it doesn't stop here, and I don't know where you put the blame necessarily. Like, I don't know that I look at Valve and go, I guess because the alternative that's often brought in front of these companies is if you don't take this step, and this step is like, from PayPal or Visa or whoever, we're going to cut off transactions for everything else. So it puts everybody, both from who's going to defend this shit, like that it should exist on the platform, to the platform holders. Like, again, this wedge issue is very convenient and is not new. It's just new to video games.
Well, and it's overwhelmingly like, it's a weapon. Part of it is asymmetric in that a lot of more. It's weird. I hate using left leaning because like we're talking about stuff like sexuality, which doesn't necessarily map to like an easy left right. Like you know what I'm gesturing at here.
Mm-hmm.
But like people with like broader sensibilities, just by their nature, are not the sort of people who are like, you know what I'm going to spend my weekend doing? Harassing MasterCard to get them to like stop funding. Like, you should stop letting people donate to like mega churches through like a credit card processor or something like that. They don't operate that way because like sort of fundamentally to sort of being inside that tent is live and let live, right? Well, it's not my business. It's not harming me. Fuck it. The same is not true. Like, these are people who, like, we want to go hurt people. We want to have control over people. We will dedicate our time and energy to doing that. And so it's asymmetric in that way. I do think also there is something to most major companies do have sort of a right-leaning bias, just in terms of their leadership, their interests. And so I think they'll play ball more readily with these groups, because fundamentally it does sort of suit their worldview. It keeps it gives them a better relationship to people who are their various allies, and people who on other axes provide them some political cover. It's frustrating to see Valve do something like this, because it is one of those things where I'm sure a lot of money, a lot of business gets done on Steam, and that is one of those cases where it's like, okay, well, if you want to make PayPal now sort of the default payment avenue for online transactions, go with God, because I bet you Visa doesn't want that. But no one's going to call that bluff, because there's too much money at stake, and it's just so easy to let these guys get picked off. The other component of that is, I think Valve has a trickier thing, because with stuff like games, it is much fuzzier to try to figure out what's the bad game about underage sex, and what's the good game about underage sex, right? It's you can't imagine one. Not hard, but moderating that stuff is actually gonna be a really tricky thing. What merit does it have? What's going on here? Is this
when anyone can publish, right? It is not as though Apple, Microsoft, PlayStation, Sony, Nintendo, they can draw those distinctions because they're going to itemize and examine the games that are coming through their platforms. They're much looser on that these days. There's plenty of AI slop and asset flip trash that is all games that are designed to pick up on keywords that you might be believe me, they're more than willing to put a lot of crap on their stores just to fill them. But there is a level of moderation care that is happening that in many ways, it's sort of incumbent on Valve to just tip over because the payment processor asked them to. Because the moment that they dip their toe in a different direction, doesn't it really just call into question all the shit that we've called them out and talked about previously? It's you don't moderate your communities, or you don't moderate the existence of pro-Nazi content on in your the moment you do a little bit. This is the argument for writ large, the what is it, section shields
230
230 shields a lot of social. Shields social media companies from being sued for speech that occurs on their platforms. We're a social platform, we're not a media, blah, blah, blah.
Blue Sky, you can't be sued for libel. Blue Sky can't be sued for libel.
Yes.
If, we talk mad shit on Blue Sky about something.
Right. And that's, there's a lot of advantages to that existing. And then there's, but all, Blue Sky, Twitter, all of them over the years have gotten themselves in all sorts of different discourse, controversies, however you want to characterize it, over sure, it's good that we are prevented from being liable for this content, but also we're going to exert moderation on the platform, and Valve just doesn't do that. And even when it comes up to this line, it's not moderation, they're just deleting in response to pressure from an outside force.
You tell us what are the problem games, we'll remove them from the platform,
which is itself a really fucking slip. That if I am, and maybe this is as good as any, transition to get over to the other stuff in a moment, but again, it's the give an inch. Haven't you just given a permission structure to these same sorts of companies to then put move the needle a little bit further? Or from Valve's perspective, do they look at it? And I don't think this is inherently unreasonable. Look, man, if they came and said take off all of the queer content from Steam, we're not going to do that. But this specific sort of ask and pressure is one in which I don't think we're going to get a lot of pushback from, which is probably a reasonable place to end up.
Family Fuckfest 3000 AD is not the hill to die on. That's just not you're telling me I can make all this go away by just delisting Family Fuckfest 3000?
All that makes me think of is, who was the eccentric is maybe one word. He made Battle Cruiser.
Derek Smart, that's what I was referring to.
Okay, good. I'm glad. That only makes sense to 17 people that listen to. Actually, maybe for audience, it's bigger than that. I know that makes no sense to Kato, but I wonder if Rob is riffing on a Derek Smart reference, but that is
no. So I do have I have more sympathy with Valve's situation here than I do with for instance, the Pornhub example. Yeah, because the Pornhub example was dudes, you have this so much of Sam's work is hey, there's violent crime just happening on your fucking platform, and Pornhub being I don't know about that. It's the internet. It's kind of the
guess
Wild
it's-
West on Pornhub. You know what I
Have you
mean?
been there before, Sam?
Yeah.
Come on.
And it's like, okay, this is like you're running a site that should warehouses video content. You need to moderate it. You evil fucking assholes. But the problem was Pornhub also kind of loved that they were getting the views off that shit. Like Pornhub was like, oh, I'm shocked that there's revenge porn on this platform, but kind of not really. And so like it was only when eventually, yes, pressure was brought to bear on them. There was enough bad press, and they were sort of being made like almost into accomplices of these activities that like they finally took action. But even there, you know, I would bet you a lot of people who weren't doing anything wrong, who were just like sex workers uploading videos to Pornhub, got hit with that because, again, rather than do the baseline of moderation there, they were just like, well, you know what? Only verified accounts get to have access to the platform. And if you're not one of those, it's just you're over, you're cut off. And that is all because, that is a very hack and slash, like broad brush solution to a thing that like, well, you're just not a responsible company in any sense. Like you're working with sensitive material, and you've got an easy pipeline to getting that stuff out in the public, and you haven't put in any safeguards, and you ignore the warnings you do get about bad actors on the platform. And so it's like that is kind of a different thing where Steam is kind of like games just end up on Steam. All sorts of games, all quality levels. It's stuff just exists there. Pornhub took the approach that, we will algorithmically promote certain types of porn videos and make them more popular. And then sort of panic when we finally called out on it. But that was sort of the classic, like, bad actor tech company approach, which was just, we will be damned before, if we do anything to moderate these problems that are sort of inherent to our operation. And instead we will do the laziest thing and probably hit a lot of unintended targets. Steam, slightly different situation. I have some sympathy for the position they are in, but at the same time, like, this is, man, again, it's a slippery slope because there's what these groups ultimately like to do. They will hold up the examples of the most offensive, objectionable games possible as like, who can defend this? But the target they're actually after is a lot of times queer media, and defining that, like, when we think about how angry people, the notion of like, I have nothing against queer people, but I don't want their beliefs shoved down my throat. And what they mean by that is I do not want to see them existing. I certainly do not want to see like queer love or queer sexuality. To me, that is offensive and rises to the level of porn. And that is frequently the target that exists behind these groups. Like, they're going to highlight the most objectionable, like, horrendous shit. But the thing they're after is Dream Daddy, right? Like, it's stuff like that. Like, eventually they're going to open the aperture enough to try and get at stuff like that, because ultimately they don't want these expressions of like sexuality, happiness, existence to exist for people. And they operate behind a smokescreen. And part of it is targeting this really objectionable stuff. And the other thing is the really abstract, I just care about children. People, a group that exists meaningfully for only about 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, below the age of like five or six, that kid is basically housebound and like protected by like, just being a baby, being a toddler. Once you're talking about like age 12, 13, what we have there in a lot of ways is a developing young adult who's going to start making their decisions and having agency. So like, I just need to protect these like children, these like from just having beliefs imprinted on them. They just encounter something and immediately they're recruited by big queerness. Like that's kind of how they.
This is how it works. That's the queer agenda, actually. I was trying,
and it turns out like part of it is just being in communities. and having a broader experience, and that's the objection. Like, just don't represent these other ideas. But you say you're for protecting children, and if you're against me, you must be for harming children. And it's infuriating because it's very effective. It's very hard to disprove. It's a bit like the anti-Semitism thing, where the people who are loudest about, like, I care deeply about anti-Semitism don't care about anti-Semitism. Like, the purest expression of that was, like, the chairman of the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, being like, in retrospect, maybe we should have said something when Elon Musk did the Hitler salute. And it's like, yeah, because he did a fucking Hitler salute, bro.
That's like, you want to talk about fucking anti-Semitism?
Yeah. But it didn't care,
there,
right? Because it wasn't. Because ultimately, what the ADL cared about was, like, if you object to, like, carpet bombing Gaza, that's not anti-Semitic. If you promote Nazism in the United States, who's to say? Maybe that's just an expression of, your weird neurodivergence.
I was trying to find. I couldn't remember. I feel like this also. It's extremely funny that Steam like has this sort of. You can put anything you want on there, basically, right? Like, you can see the, like, masses and masses of, like, porn games that, like, come up just, like, from, like, we have to have the not safe for work filter on when we do Steam Vent for this very reason.
Well, because it's not as though it's every 15 games.
No.
It is.
It's so much.
It's predominant's the wrong word, but it is constant. It is a huge part of or maybe a meaningful part of the Steam ecosystem,
right,
at this point, is what would be considered, like 18 plus adult sexually oriented content. And I mean that in a broad spectrum of what that can mean.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't know if this was a story that we ran back at Waypoint, or if I just heard this through secondhand stuff, but I feel like I've heard of them having, or like developers having issues putting their stuff on Steam, that are, like, even less explicit, but still, like, sexually, like, themed. I think Lady Killer in a Bind, which is the image that's on the PC Gamer website, the PC Gamer thing, was one of those games. But I couldn't. I was trying to find it on my phone because I don't want to open something on here and get everything killed. But it's like coming at it from both ends of just, like, first they, like, try to make it difficult for the stuff to even exist, even though they say that they're, like, really open about what can go on there, and it's so obvious that how much hetero, just, like, gooner bait shit gets on there that they do not care about. It's just like, well, someone's gonna swipe a credit card for that, that's fine. But, like, a thoughtfully made visual novel that has queer people, oh no. Oh god. And, like, the thing is, like, the particularly, like horrid thing about the way that this happens is that, like, Steam could set up ahead of time policies that they follow, right? Specific policies that they follow. And, like, their kind of laissez-faire approach to it means that anyone gets on there, and people sort of depend on certain amounts of exposure or being on the platform to make money. And having this sort of, like, carte blanche, like, oh, but the credit cards, like, flinched and then, like, everything was gone in, like, a matter of days. It's just like yeah, like, this time the Eye of Sauron happened to be on incest games, but, like, the fact that could happen with such, like, rapidity is gonna, like, cause horrible, like, repercussions to people when it turns towards things that are, like, legitimately, like, art games that include sexuality that just happen to be a little too weird for the people at the other end of the control, right? It's just, like, the fact that they had to they acquiesced so quickly to, like, I think the article points this out. It's just, like, the having the credit card companies be the moral arbiters of what can exist on a platform is
Right.
horrible, right? Like, and like maybe Steam wouldn't do a much better job on their own necessarily, but it feels like if there's some setup ahead of time where people can know, like, oh, okay, this is what Steam's okay with, we can work around that or something, rather than like, well, we're okay with everything until someone says something about it, and then all of a sudden we're not okay with it anymore, and everything gets fucking nuked, and goodbye to whatever small revenue Steam you may or may not have had. Yeah.
Well, the fact that Steam will just fold like that, and that's Steam, right? Like
that's Steam.
if you're someone if you're creating queer media or something, and your revenue stream is like dependent on a less like powerful, well-heeled company, like, well, what chance do you have? Now you're just hoping that your security is through obscurity, that no one looks at what's going on.
No one notices.
Yeah. But yeah, no, fuck groups like this. Absolutely, like, do not trust them. I'm a firm subscriber to Jamal Bowie's pedocon theory of politics, which is sort of a corollary to every accusation from right-wingers as a confession. Which kind of is, right? Like the debanking obsession. Like they're going to debank so that they will deny access to legitimate financial avenues, people who like have conservative beliefs. But then like a lot of their political allies will make it impossible for like sex workers to access like the banking system, right? That's kind of here's the thing we want to do. We're really concerned that it could ever be used against us. But we're going to hand wring about this. And it's a similar thing where, this is a movement that is frequently deeply implicated in being enmeshed in some of the abuses that it purports to be concerned about. And at a certain point, you just have to stop even giving these people like any shred of the benefit of the doubt. Like when someone shows up and they're banging their drum about like, I am deeply concerned about like regulating speech and making it so that speech that encourages like violence and exploitation of children doesn't exist, almost certainly that person is telling you there's a type of violence and exploitation of children that they're okay with, they're comfortable with, and are kind of making it their mission to promote. Even if it's just the sort of the background radiation of sexual violence that exists under the patriarchy. But when you see these people coming, you just got to tell them to fuck off. And we're not there yet. We still extend the benefit of the doubt way too readily. Anyway, so that's happening.
Right, sure. And that's happening on Steam. Some of the first reporting on this ends up coming from I'm going to call it Waypoint 2.0 just for the sake of shorthand. You're not okay with that one? New Waypoint?
Waypoint 2?
Waypoint 2?
I like New Waypoint the most.
New Waypoint.
And new
and you. Yeah,
and
no, we
you,
knew.
Yeah. Everyone knew.
Okay, fine. New Waypoint. There was reporting that happened there, specifically from Anna Vellens, who's done a bunch of also like VTuber work at New Waypoint specifically. Anna published a series of pieces that seemed to connect the group, or suggest that the group, or a group that was taking credit for some of this pressure that was happening to Valve, was a group called Collective Shout. There were several pieces published on New Waypoint about this. These pieces were then subsequently taken down, seemingly under pressure from Vice. That was not communicated externally in any way. Often when a piece is taken down, which is a real sort of apocalyptic event for an article to come down from a website, usually that's a lot of hand-wringing. It's often the consequence of legal action as opposed to an editorial decision. But here, Anna has said publicly that it was Anna's understanding that this was part of the pressure coming from Vice itself, who was worried over Google placement as a result of reporting on this. Anna has also had articles taken down from New Waypoint that were related to reporting, as I mentioned earlier, that Anna has done on VTubers and sort of like far-right VTubers and movements there. So this has sort of been a reoccurring theme with New Waypoint. I think it's worth as a preface, bringing up like where New Waypoint finds itself. You know, like we shut down old Waypoint 1.0. We closed in June 2023. I guess we technically closed in late April 2023
Late April,
when we were accidentally laid off. But we formally we ceased like publishing anything in early June. That's when Remap starts. Vice ends up in, you know, many months of bankruptcy and trying to find sort of a new financial home. That ends up happening with a company called Savage Ventures in May 2024. I really recommend the two of you right now look up some of the websites that Savage Ventures operates, such as outdoors.com, 247, the numbers, 247health.com. There's also AmericanSongwriter.com, but those will all give you a real sense of the slop that Savage Ventures is publishing. It's like really simplistic, impossible to tell if it was written by a human, websites that are clearly just meant to be domain acquisitions with keywords and like Google placement in order to maximize ad revenue in the easiest way possible. So
watch adorable bison video plus fun facts.
Exactly. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Who doesn't want that?
In May 2024, to Axios, Vice Media CEO Bruce Dixon said of this move, quote, "This structure allows us to leverage Savage's leading expertise and furthers our vision to produce compelling original content that entertains while pushing boundaries." October 2024, New Waypoint launches under managing editor Dwayne Jenkins. Jenkins has since told Aftermath that he did not want to use the Waypoint name, but Savage Ventures wanted to use the Waypoint name. There's a reason they didn't give it to us. Like, Waypoint was around for, 7 years, and that gets you placement on search engines. Like, we always were very realistic in understanding that was honestly, like, sure, take the name if you were going to give us all the membership stuff. We thought that was a very fair trade at the time, and don't really have any regrets over that. Even if you could wave a magic wand, we kept everything. New Waypoint is like pretty bog standard for like a lot of websites. It's not it's a lot of like really quick newsy articles, previews, reviews, extremely short features, brief paragraphs commenting on news with very like whimsy headlines like, "Hey, did you check out what Nintendo announced today? Whoa!" Sort of stuff. And it's and a focus on indie games that is probably not necessarily for SEO. That seems like mostly for 800 articles for them, one article for us. But they do a lot of stuff about indie games, or at least they did. But it seemed like an SEO play. Like, we are just going to sort of flood the zone, so to speak, with all sorts of articles, with keywords and headlines, and that is going to be what New Waypoint is. Aftermath and reported, and many of the writers at New Waypoint mentioned that they were being paid $30 per article. Now, this is not a defense of those articles, but these articles were broadly very short, right? Like, we are not talking about really extensive features, but I think even for the most simplistic, straightforward news piece that might take 20 minutes of your time, $30 is an insulting amount of money that will not allow you to purchase much of anything. And so I point people towards Aftermath as a couple of pieces.
$20 really, because 10 of those dollars belongs to Uncle Sam.
That's true. That's the remap method of paying freelancers, which is to increase it by a third. You are correct. So I point people towards Aftermath. They have some good pieces, both commenting and sort of walking you through the timeline here. There's been a lot of other conversation surrounding this in terms of what it means to accept like work for $30 a piece. What does that say about sort of the state of being a freelance writer? What does that say about the state of media companies? What does it say about the lack of a mentorship structure in which, like, how do you end up with websites running this way? Well, if you have a pipeline of people who are exploited and have no mentorship in journalism, in management, like, you're going to end up with further exploited places sort of as a result. So a lot of stuff happening here. I think as a group, we have been very reluctant to weigh in on things related to New Waypoint because I think, as we mentioned the last time we talked about it, Vice, bad company, but like did us right. Like in a weird circumstance, we were better off now than we were back then, and so I haven't really personally taken all that much umbrage at Vice like resuscitating Waypoint and trying to do something with it because I'm good, man.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the reason we wanted to talk about this was because how this person like this, obviously people have been asking us to want to comment on it. I think there are ways into it that aren't just sort of wagging your finger at, like, I can't believe Vice brought back Waypoint. And then obviously how it intersected with the really, noteworthy conversation we just had about Steam and sort of anti-porn practices on the internet. Sorry, Chia, you were going to say something.
What was I gonna say? Well, I mean, also I do think that for the most, I don't know how many people ended up are still there, but like the people who did right by us at the end there were definitely more of our peers than the company Vice that was just trying to slough off as many assets as possible before the bankruptcy. And so I have no I don't know, yeah, no, Savage Ventures obviously sucks, and the way that they set up, it was set up to be the most sort of just content mill, trying to get as many things out the door as possible.
It's what these sites are now. Who's I forgot who Valnet, that they're who bought Polygon, right?
Right.
Related again.
Did you see the most recent shit with them
of Pornhub? No.
Well, Polygon started running articles under the Polygon aesthetic layout, and they have bylines and everything, and they're only just vaguely labeled an ad. It's super insidious.
That's so upsetting. Sad. Oh my god.
And this is all an outgrowth of the same stuff, right? Like Valnet is Savage Ventures is insert other exploitative company that is just hoovering up media companies. I mean, this all goes along. Oh man, I forget. There was a statistic going around recently of analyzing click-through rate for Google searches versus AI summaries, and they are just Google and these companies are just capturing more and more of people sticking on their platforms without ever actually leaving them, and all of that goes hand in hand with the strangling of media companies, even well-meaning ones, to find ways to make money, to scale, to pay people more along cost of living, and also just as a sign of respect for you're older, you should be paid more, you should be able to have access to more things, and it just fucking sucks. It sucks all the way, all the way up, down, left, right. It fucking sucks.
In some ways, the way this is all ended is one of the more Waypoint things that could have happened. You're trying to report on a beat that a lot of people just don't touch because it's a tricky beat. There's a long history of people trying to cover sex games and burning out on it because a piece strikes the wrong tenor and offends the shit out of people, or it attracts
offends an advertiser.
Yeah. Or people just are just refuse to understand why you're treating these things worthy of criticism or analysis. It's it's a very tough beat, and it's very tricky to handle. And frequently the thanks you get in the end is being sort of unceremoniously let go, because a piece wasn't received well. Here it is a sort of spineless corporate overlord just panicking at the thought that maybe this could come back on them, so fuck it. Let's just pull the article down and then nuke everything.
Sorry, I guess I didn't close the loop on that, which is that essentially, I forget if Anna decided they were no longer going to contribute or were told by Vice that their contributions were no longer welcomed at Vice. This goes above managing editor Dwayne Jenkins in terms of what was being communicated.
It was the way I saw it was that she quit after the things got taken down, and then after the fact, Savage said something about no longer allowing any contributions from
And
Yeah,
they turned
I
off
mean, you end up in
Jenkins,
the-
Slack.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you end up in the same place, which is basically like, we don't want this work on here, and
Yeah.
we don't want your work here. And then in solidarity with Anna sort of being blacklisted by Vice, the other regular contributors to New Waypoint in solidarity said, we're no longer going to contribute to Waypoint. There's a little bit of like weirdness of like, I'm going to make good on my PR obligate. That's a separate. I'm not going to let myself get sidetracked with like that as part of your solidarity statement, but it was a little odd.
It's bad. Look, there's no dignity in the space. Like to some of the points we made, like the way these companies operate, the margins they're running on,
I know.
fitful supervision. Like there's just not. There is an indignity that is happening across the board, and there's places where I wish someone had done something differently or handled it differently. But at the same time, I look at the entire situation. It's like that was quite the fucking quagmire.
Yes, and so the other writers have announced they're like, I guess, finishing some obligations. They're leaving, and Dwayne Jenkins, the managing editor, shared in solidarity, that like, hey, I respect your decisions, leave. That actually makes a lot of sense. A version of that. I think Dwayne told Aftermath that he messaged his boss within Vice saying, I think I'm going to have to leave the company as a result of this, but I'd be happy to stay on for, the rest of the month in order to see things through and sort of ensure a handoff. And the result of that was just being fired on the spot, and having Slack discontinued as the explanation, as essentially the initial explanation for your services are no longer welcome here, which is pretty common, right? Like, part of the reason I thought we still had jobs originally was because we had access to email, because usually it's those communication services that get pulled out from you and that's when you realize the big moment. It just happened for us in a different order of events, but yeah, I think what happened here, you can pick nits at New Waypoint's approach to editorial, and there's been much said about some of the editing after the fact and editorial practices that were happening there. I take less of an issue with like those individual sort of choices that were made as much as what it tells me about the state of media as a field. Like the reason you end up with publications that don't have those standards is a combination of a lack of resources to enact them and a lack of experience with prioritizing that as part of how you run something like this. And the lack of resources and experience, and well, if I publish 3 pieces today, I make $90 versus if I publish 2 pieces today, I make $60. I'm not saying that adds up to a ton of money, but it's money.
I mean, I've done it. It was $50 at the time, but like I've done it, and you'll be doing the math. Like, well, if I get, if I really like lock the fuck in, and I get like 3-4 pieces a day done, it's actually pretty good money, right? Like I'd be making $200 a day from my home, the dream.
Right, and that's the headspace you get in, like when you're like being paid like per piece that way in a sort of content mill sort of fashion, and like that stuff was less exploitive back when you and I were drifting between you did freelance much longer than I did, Rob, but like the difference was like you often felt like you had editors like cared to like help guide you through like what you were capable of doing and how much they could pay you and like what the budget was. Whereas these days, it just feels like a free-for-all in which it's just everyone fighting for scraps, and the scraps barely amount to anything. And it certainly doesn't amount to a career, and that is going to have profound consequences for like the profession going forward. It used to be, sure, are you being exploited and not being paid well? Hell yeah, brother! But then you get that first staff job, or you get that first regular beat, and you like claw your way up, and you don't have to do that shit anymore. The problem is, where are you clawing your way to now? Like, there's nowhere to claw to. It's just, you go from being paid $30 at New Waypoint to being paid $40 at New Polygon or whatever. I don't know what they're paying for but you know what I mean? Like, all you're doing is just jumping ship to the other SEO churn website that is paying jack shit to you, but will accept the money because the AI tools haven't gotten good enough to trick the audience yet.
Yeah, it's It's grim. And the thing is, like, we always knew it would end this way somehow. It was just kind of a question of like, when are they going to pull the plug? And probably the people working there also knew that this was like, because this is how it ends. This is how the story ends. This is how it doesn't necessarily matter if you're one of the more precarious. Everyone in media is precarious, and so this is how the end comes for you. The more precarious you are, the more likely it is that it will end up in this situation. But if it wasn't this, it was going to be something else. It's kind of interesting that, unsurprising that, like, to the question earlier of the ideological component of things like this, was the panic over this like just pure ignorance over, what if this group out there like takes issue with the fact we reported accurately on what they say they are doing in public? Was it just sort of panic over that? Was it a refusal to like leave anything on the website that someone could potentially like bring a sort of a nuisance suit against? Or is there an ideological component where, hey, leave people like that alone? Don't report on stories like this because fundamentally we don't want to bother people like that. Tough to say, but it is kind of interesting that, like, this was the line, which is like not that it's not like you were unmasking some kind of like grand conspiracy in the shadows, right? And like, I found this one person who's like behind all. No, it was like, here's a pressure group that is just like, here's what they are doing, here's how they operate, and here's the effects it had. Pretty A to B to C reporting, and that was too much, because my suspicion is for these companies, even that is too much, right? Like when we were Waypoint also had Vice had a very risk averse legal department, where the line was rarely, is this defensible from the point of view, like, are we steering clear of anything like libelous? That wasn't the standard. It is, are we steering clear of anything that could produce a meritless libel suit, which is a very different line. Mm-hmm. But that is the line that Vice preferred to stay on the cautious side of, which means there's a whole lot of reporting that becomes like damn near impossible under those standards.
Because you're worried about a boogeyman. Like it's an invisible lawsuit that may or may not appear, but in theory, the reason you have a legal team is to weather the frivolous lawsuits, so that you weather the frivolous lawsuits so other people won't do it in the future because they know you'll just fight you on it. So you might as well just not even try. But if all of a sudden you're like, boxing against a ghost, like you're gonna influence the editorial,
right?
And also like it 100%. There were just certain stories that I would just not pursue or chase. Like, why would I even spend the time? Yep. Because I know I'm going to get to the legal part of this, because I've run into this issue before. Like, it is just, I can still do good stories. I can still do stories I'm proud of. But there were certain ones I just shied away from, because why would I spend months building a case for something knowing that it's just going to get tipped over in the other direction? And yeah, you need a legal department to do stuff like, you know what I mean? That is the tricky part. The difference was, it never felt like Vice's legal department was fighting for us. It felt like Vice's legal department was fighting against us.
No, it was a really good example of like how institutions within institutions like end up having their own interests. Like the legal department didn't want more legal department work on their plate. Like, we're already full up on the work we can handle. So if we can do something to avoid further issues cropping up, then we're going to push for that. And so suddenly legal stops saying, if you publish this, then you're edging too close to libel or something like that. No, instead the legal department is like, well, this could conceivably force us to do work, and so we would rather not. But then these operations, even more fly by night than that, is here's a piece that like it talks about someone doing a thing that seems dangerous to us, take it down. And like that is the other future of this, right? Is that any sort of notion of corporate masters like this being able to do any sort of baseline journalism beyond just like restating press releases is out the window, because anything that is like, well, if it's in a press release, they must want us to talk about it. So that content is safe, right? But anything that like, hey, here's someone doing a thing out in the open and bragging about it, but we're naming them, we're talking about them, that's scary. don't publish stuff like that. And that's how a lot of these, like, they have no interest in doing journalism. They just want views on trending topics and games.
Yes. Nailed it.
Shit's fucked. Anything else we want to hit, Patrick, or do we want to just start talking about games?
We went so long. I don't need to make fun of Splitgate 2. Splitgate 2 makes fun of itself. So we could just move on.
All right, let's take a little break. I need to get some hydration, and then we'll be back after this.